In this video, we're answering your frequently asked questions about modular homes and BonnaVilla.
Hey Mike, I thought we'd start off with some of the frequently asked questions that we get on the modular side. And one of the questions we always get is, what's the difference between modular and a manufactured home?
Yeah, Scott, it is a commonly asked question, and I think a lot of times that's because it's confusing to people, and oftentimes confusing on purpose, because I think that there's a lot of terminology that's used out there to intermingle exactly what people are talking about. And the reality is that at BonnaVilla, what we would call a manufactured home is going to be a HUD-coated home, which is built to the federal standards for a mobile home or a manufactured home and to a performance code. And a modular home is going to be built to conventional building codes that most states have a program that manages the inspections and the code compliance to just regular site-built building codes.
Yeah, and I think one of the other points that everybody makes is, can you finance them the same? You really can. A modular home is considered to be more of a site-built, so as it relates to financing, conventional financing, all that stuff still takes in place. And with the manufactured home, traditionally those are known to be more maybe just home-only loans. Stays with the title, but you can still put it on a permanent foundation and de-title it. I think one of the other things that people kind of bring up with that too is, well, which one stays on wheels and a frame, right? So the manufactured home stays on the frame, the wheels come off of it in a sense, but there always is going to be a frame underneath the house that takes it out to that customer's property. And then on a modular home, that frame is taken out, it's craned onto a foundation, and then with the manufactured home, that metal frame stays underneath it.
Right, and the federal standard for a HUD-coated manufactured home, which is what we call it, it requires that frame stay underneath it, and quite frankly, it requires that be completely finished at the factory for the most part, with a few exceptions, whereas a modular home typically it can be built to just about any level of finish. We can leave things out, and quite frankly, we regularly leave things out, although it's not typically economic to do that. Another frequently asked question we get at BonnaVilla is, which one of those do we do?
So BonnaVilla was started in 1970. Back in the day when it was started, it was primarily manufactured homes, and I'd say it kind of evolved into modular homes probably in the 1990s to where it leads us today, where traditionally what we do and typically what we do is probably about 95% modular and 5% manufactured.
Right, so today we're building basically anything that you would consider residentially coded construction, which would be a single family home, duplex, triplex, things like that. We don't typically get into apartments, IBC buildings, commercial buildings, and that type of construction. But the reality is, if it's coded to IRC, the International Residential Code, we're going to pretty much do anything that falls underneath that umbrella. And our sweet spot is really going to be that single family detached home entry level. And where we draw the line on customizations is normally that IRC to IBC line.
And I guess that would flow into another question that we have is, as it relates to the homes, what are some of the limitations we have as far as box width limitation, heights? Maybe you can elaborate into that a little bit.
So the limitations, we do get this question all the time, and the limitations are really fairly straightforward. If you think about the average or the normal typical lane of a highway, the height of an underpass, the width, and then if you put a semi with a trailer on the back of it going down the highway, 16 feet wide, 16 feet tall, and 76 feet long for what's behind the semi, that's really going to be about the limitation that we can build. And there again, that's going to kind of fall within the typical line of our limitations, right, is going to be those dimensions.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes where we draw the line is, we've talked about it before, that you got a box, we want to color inside the lines as far as what we offer to the customer. So we can make reasonable customizations as far as some of the things they want to do on the inside of the home, but there are some limitations that we're going to have as far as how big that we can get a house. So we offer a lot of customization as far as some of the options and features you can do. I think typically more than what they're going to see in the industry. But as it relates to that box size, there are some certain things we could do and limitations we do have there.
And so the next question, which is really a big loaded question that we get constantly, is what does a modular home cost, right? That's all the time asked.
Quite a bit. I think it varies on a couple different factors. There's certain things as far as your location and where you're planning on putting the home. That's going to be a factor. There's going to be some other factors as far as the options that you put inside the house, whether it's going to be a 312 all the way up to a 912 Cape Cod style. That also comes into the point of, are you doing solid core interior doors? Are you going to stick with a standard hollow core? Are you going to do laminate countertops versus solid surface type material countertop? So I think the ability to kind of customize it with those options is going to be based off of what the cost is going to be. But it really comes down to working with a local builder and or developer to make sure they're tailoring it to what your needs are specifically going to be.
Yeah, because the cost, those variables, ultimately the cost is going to, it's going to vary location, what it is, where it is, all those things all over the place.
Right. So a customer comes in, they say, okay, we got the house picked out. We have the options that we want in it. One of the big questions we have is, what's the process after that?
So I think the biggest thing that the process after everything gets decided, right, is you've got to go through and dial in all of the site-specific items and all the things that have to be done on site, would you say is really what the critical element to any project is going to be? Because, you know, in certain instances, you might have a house that's going on land right outside of town somewhere. Other instances, you're going to have a house that goes, you know, out in the middle of nowhere on land with a 5-car garage or something. But realistically, on every modular house, the modular process, if you think about it as a difference from the sill plate up, you've got an interior that needs to be completed along the marriage lines, we call it, where they come together, and you've got exterior that needs to be completed on the outside, and then the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, and, you know, ventilation and things like that have all got to be connected between the boxes. And so all the other things aside, like foundations that are strictly speaking site work, the modular part itself has a process that needs to be completed on site, and that local contractor will really be the one that can take the project that, like you said, where you have all those customized options and roof pitches, and dial in all those costs depending on what all those things are included.
Yeah, I agree. I think the idea that it's like you bought a house, good luck, we're going to be there in 3 months to set it, hope it all works out. That's not the case. Generally, when they're picking it out through one of our certified builders that we have out there, they're going to be able to work with them to make sure that that install is all figured into that. And that relates to where the common wall, where the two halves come together, making those necessary electrical connections. And then underneath the house, what does that mean? You got all your sewer drops there, making those connections and running them to where they need to go. So I think all that stuff's going to be very important to the builder in the long run, but also who they decide they're going to go with.
Agreed. And so you're talking about these contractors and the people and where we deal with. And I think that leads to one of the other most frequently asked questions we get is, where does BonnaVilla service? Where all do we ship homes to?
Yeah, so I'd say primarily we're kind of in the Midwest area. We kind of draw the line as it relates to the West, probably Montana area, straight down, Idaho. We go over to the east into Minnesota, Missouri, and then in the south, kind of in that New Mexico, Oklahoma area. We'll kind of venture out possibly into those. But based off of where we're at, we're based in Aurora, Nebraska, so whatever's central to us, we try to kind of sell into those areas. But based off of where it goes, if it goes further than that, it becomes impractical and just hard for us to deliver.
So if we don't have a builder in someone's area, you know, what do they do?
Well, we can try to have a builder that's going to be close to the area and see if they can work with them in delivering a house out to that area. So I would say that if they're not in the areas that we normally service, still give us an opportunity to see what we can do to possibly help them out, depending on the builder base that we have right now. I'd say another question that we have is, how long does it take? So a customer comes in, these houses are built in a factory-controlled environment. What can they expect as far as the lead time from when they place an order?
Right, and I think that this is another loaded question because building a home in a factory is a very fast process for us. It usually takes about 2 weeks, right? So actually constructing the house and manufacturing it is very quick. But the reality is that's the fastest part of the process. The typical time frame for us is usually going to be more like 3 or 4 months once the order is complete, because there's so many other things involved with just getting a modular home built in the factory. And then, quite frankly, once it's built and once we do have it constructed, it's still got to ship to the site. And like we were talking about before, there's processes on site that you have to go through to complete it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we have some of that confusion could be because it only takes 2 weeks. The customer says, well, I should have my house in 2 weeks. And that's not the case. Because we sell over the Midwest area, we have a backlog, and that backlog is going to kind of dictate when that home goes onto the production line, which can be several months after they place the order. And then it also comes down to who they bought it from. Based off of that builder's backlog and what they have already on the schedule, that house could get out there, and it could be a little bit of time before they get that house placed on a foundation. So although it only takes us a couple weeks to build a house, there's a lot of factors on the front side and back side that go into the way that process works.
Right. So I think even though I think the question most people want to ask is, how long is my home going to take to build, right? It's not really how long does a modular home take. And I think the reality is with all of those variables and all those different locations, it's very project specific. So it even depends on the timing and the time of year oftentimes.
Yeah, and that's the beauty. Again, we'll get into this a little bit later on, but the beauty of manufactured modular homes is they're built in a controlled environment. So even if it's wintertime, it's raining outside, whatever it might be, we have 170 full-time workers in there actively working on that process and building the houses daily. So, and I'd say one of the other questions that we get, Mike, is elaborate a little bit. When did BonnaVilla get purchased by Chief Industries?
It is funny that that's a question we get all the time, and the very simple answer to that is, quite frankly, that Chief has always owned BonnaVilla. Chief started BonnaVilla in 1970, but we do get asked on a regular basis, when did Chief buy BonnaVilla, or when did Chief take over BonnaVilla? We've always been a part of Chief. BonnaVilla is Chief. We are the housing division of Chief. And we've actually had people kind of challenge us pretty hard on, they know that's not true, or they really didn't believe that. So it's it's actually a funny question.
Yeah, as our title says, a division of Chief Industries.
Right.
So I think it could be a little confusing out there, but trust this when we say that it's always been a part of Chief, started in 1970. That's always the process that we have.
Yeah, we have news articles and evidence in the plant to show the original owner of Chief signing documents on it. So
and we
always
got the smartest man alive with Mike Morrow, or at least he claims to be. So anytime somebody wants to get in a debate with him, we can kind of take that step.
I would love to debate any of those topics, but especially that one when somebody wants to do that.
Very passionate.
Absolutely.
He's very passionate.
I'd get very passionate about it.
I think one of the questions we get, Mike, is when they look at a display home on a lot, does the furniture come with it?
The furniture absolutely doesn't come with it, but it can come with it if you want it, Scott. Some of the furniture you picked out for this latest house, let's be honest, nobody's going to want that furniture. But
thank you, Mike.
I guess we have had that request when I was picking out furniture.
Thank you.
Get started working on your modular home project on our website at BonnaVilla.com at the link below.